The great chamber was silent. 47 species had gathered on the neutral world of Tessara, and not one of them made a sound. The domed ceiling stretched high above, covered in lights that looked like distant stars. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their designated places, their bodies strange and different from one another. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no solid form at all. But today they all looked at one thing, the single human standing alone in the center of the floor. Kangduri was 63 years old. His hair had turned white many years ago, and deep lines marked his face. He had served as Earth's ambassador for 22 years, and in all that time, he had never been allowed to sit among the council members. Humans were a probationary species. They had to stand. They had to wait. And they had to prove themselves worthy of a seat that was never going to be offered. Duri kept his hands folded behind his back and his expression calm. He had learned long ago that the aliens watched human faces very carefully. They found human emotions fascinating and frightening in equal measure. So Duri had trained himself to show nothing, let them wonder what he was thinking. The Speaker of the Council rose from his central throne. His name was Vorith, and he belonged to a species that looked like giant insects. His body was covered in hard black shell, and his eyes were large and multifaceted, reflecting the chamber lights like broken mirrors. When he spoke, his voice clicked and buzzed, but the translation device in Duri's ear turned it into flat, emotionless words. The Council has reached its decision regarding the species known as humanity. Duri did not move. He had heard these words before, many times. Every 5 years, the Council reviewed humanity's status. Every 5 years, they found new reasons to extend the probationary period. Too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous. The excuses changed, but the result never did. Vorith continued, his insect eyes fixed on the human below. For 30 standard cycles, we have observed your kind. We have studied your history. We have watched your behavior among the stars, and we have concluded that humanity represents an unacceptable threat to galactic peace and stability. A murmur ran through the chamber. This was new. This was different. Therefore, Vorith said, and there was something like satisfaction in his clicking voice, the Galactic Accord has voted unanimously to revoke humanity's probationary status. Not for membership, but for termination. Duri felt his heart skip, but his face remained stone. A state of war now exists between the Galactic Accord and the species known as humanity. You are given 30 standard cycles to surrender unconditionally. If you do not comply, your worlds will be cleansed, your colonies will be destroyed, your species will be removed from the galaxy. The chamber erupted. Representatives from dozens of worlds stood and cheered. Some stamped their feet or tentacles. Others made sounds that their translators could not process. They had waited a long time for this moment. Humanity had always made them nervous. The small, soft creatures from the third planet of an unremarkable star had spread too quickly, learned too fast, and asked too many questions. Now, finally, the problem would be solved. Commander Telex, the reptilian military strategist who had pushed hardest for this decision, watched the human with cold yellow eyes. He expected to see fear. He expected to see the ambassador fall to his knees and beg for mercy. That was what inferior species did when faced with the might of the Accord. But Kangduri did not fall. He did not beg. Instead, the old man did something that confused every alien in the chamber. He smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. And then he bowed, a slow and formal gesture that humans use to show respect. But there was something wrong about it, something that made Telex's scales itch with sudden unease. "The Council's decision is noted," Duri said, his voice calm and clear. "I will transmit your terms to Earth immediately." That was all. No protests, no pleading, no desperate attempts to negotiate. The human simply turned and walked toward the chamber exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Vorith's compound eyes followed him. "You have nothing more to say? No defense of your species? No appeal for mercy?" Dury stopped at the door. He turned his head slightly, just enough to look back at the speaker. "Mercy," he said, and his voice was soft. "You destroyed Sol during first contact. You killed 8 million people and called it a necessary demonstration of hierarchy. You have kept us under your boot for 30 years, stealing our resources, limiting our growth, treating us like animals." He paused. "No, Speaker Vorith. I will not ask for mercy. Humanity remembers what your mercy looks like." Then he was gone. The chamber remained quiet for a long moment. Commander Telix turned to Vorith, his yellow eyes narrowed. "That was strange," he said. "He should have been terrified." Vorith made a dismissive gesture with one of his many limbs. "Humans are emotional creatures. He is probably in shock. By tomorrow, they will be sending desperate messages, begging us to reconsider. You will see." Telix nodded slowly, but the itch in his scales did not go away. Outside the chamber, Kang Dury walked through the corridors of the council building with measured steps. His face was still calm, but inside his chest, his old heart was beating fast. Not with fear, with something else, something he had carried for 22 years. He reached his private ship and sealed the door behind him. Only then did he allow himself to breathe deeply. He sat down at the communication console and typed a message using an encryption code that no alien technology could break. The message was short, just 4 words. "They've finally done it." He sent it to a location that did not officially exist, buried deep beneath the mountains of his homeland. Then he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. 30 years of humiliation, 30 years of bowing and scraping and pretending to be weak. It was over now. The council had made their choice. They thought they were sentencing humanity to death. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Dury smiled again, and this time there was nothing small about it. In the darkness of his ship, the old ambassador finally let himself feel the emotion he had hidden for so long. Not fear, not despair, relief. The message traveled across the stars at speeds that should have been impossible. It passed through relay stations hidden in asteroid fields, bounced off satellites disguised as space debris, and finally reached a receiver buried 3 kilometers beneath the Korean peninsula. The whole journey took less than 4 seconds. Admiral Park Yuna was standing in front of a wall of screens when the message arrived. She was 52 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that rarely showed warmth. The underground facility around her hummed with quiet energy. Hundreds of people worked at their stations, monitoring systems that the rest of humanity did not know existed. This was Earth Defense Command, the heart of Project Horizon, and Yuna had commanded it for 15 years. Lieutenant Cho Mira rushed across the command center, her footsteps quick and nervous. She was young, only 28, and she had never seen actual combat. But she had trained her whole life for this moment, even though she had always hoped it would never come. "Admiral," Mira said, her voice shaking slightly. "We just received a priority message from Ambassador Kang. The Council they've declared war. Full termination order. We have 30 days. The people nearest to them stopped working. The news spread through the room like ripples in water. 30 days. Full termination. The words that every human had feared since first contact. Mira watched her commander's face, expecting to see shock or anger or fear. Instead, she saw something she did not understand. Yuna's expression did not change, her eyes did not widen, and her hands did not tremble. The Admiral simply nodded once, slowly, as if someone had told her the weather report. "At last," Yuna said. Mira blinked. "Admiral?" Yuna turned to face her. "Contact General Bayek. Tell him to activate Protocol Sunrise, all divisions, full mobilization." She paused. And get me a channel to the Silent Fleet. It's time for Captain Shin to come home. The command center erupted into controlled chaos. Orders flew across the room, screens flickered with new data. But Mira stood frozen, staring at her commander. At last? She repeated. Admiral, they just declared war on our entire species. They're going to try to kill us all. How can you say at last like you've been waiting for this? Yuna looked at the young lieutenant for a long moment. Then she turned and walked toward her private office, and gesturing for Mira to follow. The office was small and simple. There was a desk, a chair, and a single photograph on the wall. The photograph showed a city at night, its lights glittering like jewels. Seoul, before the first contact, before the accord came. Yuna sat down heavily. For the first time, Mira saw something like tiredness in her commander's face. How old are you, Lieutenant? 28, Admiral. So you were born after the rebuilding. You never saw what Seoul looked like before. Yuna's eyes moved to the photograph. I was 12 years old when the accord arrived. They said they came in peace. They said they wanted to welcome us into the galactic community. My father was a diplomat. He was one of the first humans to meet them. Mira said nothing. She had heard stories about first contact, of course. Everyone had. But she had never heard Yuna speak about it personally. The talks went well at first, Yuna continued. But then our leaders asked questions the Accord did not like. They wanted to know why humans would have to follow rules we did not help create. They wanted to know why we could not travel freely among the stars. They wanted equality. Her voice grew harder. The Accord decided that we needed a lesson, a demonstration of hierarchy, they called it. So they destroyed Seoul. 8 million people, my mother, my father, my little brother, all gone in a single night of fire. Mira felt cold. Admiral, I didn't know you were from Seoul. I survived because I was visiting my grandmother in Busan that week. Yuna's hands rested flat on her desk, perfectly still. I watched the fires from across the water. I was 12 years old, and I swore that night that humanity would never be weak again, that we would never give the Accord another chance to burn our cities and call it justice. She stood and walked to a wall panel. Her hand pressed against it, and a section of the wall slid away, revealing a hidden room beyond. Mira followed her inside and stopped breathing. The room was filled with holographic displays showing things that should not exist. Ship designs far more advanced than anything humans were supposed to have. Weapons systems that violated every Accord treaty. Maps showing hidden bases across dozens of star systems, and numbers, so many numbers, representing soldiers and ships and resources that had been quietly gathered over 4 decades. This is Project Horizon, Yuna said. For 40 years we have been preparing. Every time the Accord humiliated us, we smiled and bowed and said thank you. And behind their backs we built, we learned, we got ready for the war we always knew would come. Mira stared at the displays. The Council has no idea? They think we spent 30 years cowering. They think we used our limited resources to barely survive. They have no idea that we have been building an army in the darkness. Yuna's voice was cold but steady. 300 warships hidden in the space between stars, weapons that can destroy their shields with a single pulse, spies embedded in their society for 15 years. We are not the scared children they think we are, Lieutenant. We are wolves who have been pretending to be sheep. Mira looked at her commander with new understanding. You've been waiting for them to declare war. We needed them to strike first. We needed the galaxy to see that we did not start this fight. Yuna turned to face her fully. But make no mistake, Mira, we are going to finish it. She walked back to the command center, her steps strong and sure. The tiredness was gone from her face. In its place was something that Mira had only seen in old war photographs. Determination, purpose, and beneath it all, a fury that had been burning for 40 years. Yuna stood before her people, The room fell silent. "For 30 years. They called us dangerous," she said, her voice carrying to every corner. "They called us violent. They called us a threat. They were right. And now they are going to learn exactly how dangerous humanity can be when we stop pretending to be tame." She raised her hand. "Activate Protocol Sunrise. Wake up our ships. Arm our weapons. Call our people home." Her hand closed into a fist. "The waiting is over." In the cold darkness between stars where no light reached and no alien sensors looked, 300 ships began to wake up. Captain Shin Ara stood on the bridge of the battleship Iron Mountain, watching as her fleet came alive around her. For 12 years, she had commanded the Silent Fleet, humanity's greatest secret. Her ships had never fired a shot in anger. They had never been seen by alien eyes. They had simply waited, hidden in the void, maintaining readiness for a day that many had feared would never come. Now that day was here. "All ships reporting ready, Captain," her first officer announced. "Fleet is at full combat status." Ara nodded slowly. She was 41 years old, with a scar running down her left cheek from a training accident years ago. Her crew sometimes called her the Ice Queen behind her back because she never seemed to show emotion. But today, something flickered in her dark eyes. Not fear, anticipation. "Set course for Rally Point 7, she ordered, "and send word to command. The Silent Fleet is coming home." Her ships moved as one, engines burning blue in the endless dark. They were not elegant like Accord vessels. They were brutal things, all armor and weapons designed for one purpose, to close the distance with enemy ships and tear them apart. The aliens built their fleets for show. Humanity built its fleet for war. Far away on a space station hidden inside an asteroid field, Dr. No Jun was running final tests on his life's work. He was 67 years old, and his hands shook slightly as he worked. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. He had not slept in 3 days. There was too much to do, too many systems to check, too many weapons to verify. Project Horizon was his creation, his child, and he would not let it fail because of a missed calculation or a faulty circuit. "Doctor," his assistant called out, "the pulse cannons are showing green across all units. EMP efficiency is at 94%. June allowed himself a small smile. 94%. Better than he had hoped. The pulse cannons were his proudest achievement, weapons that could overload alien shields with a single burst. The Accord ships relied on elegant energy barriers that could stop almost any conventional attack. But they had a weakness, like a flaw in their design that alien engineers had never bothered to fix because no one had ever exploited it. Humanity had found that weakness 20 years ago. June had spent every day since then building weapons to exploit it. He moved to the next station where rows of small drones waited in their launch tubes. These were different from the pulse cannons. These were something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. Attack drones controlled by artificial intelligence, programmed to think like human soldiers, to make decisions in combat faster than any living being could react. The aliens had banned AI weapons centuries ago, calling them too unpredictable, too dangerous. They preferred wars fought by living beings, where casualties meant something, where surrender was always an option. And they did not understand that humanity had been fighting for survival since it first climbed down from the trees. Humans did not fight for honor or glory. Humans fought to win. "The galaxy has no idea what is coming," June murmured to himself. "No idea at all." On the council world of Verath, Agent Kang Su received her activation orders through a communication device hidden in her tooth. She was 35 years old, and she had not set foot on Earth since she was 20. For 15 years, she had lived among aliens, pretending to be a human trader who had abandoned her own kind. She had learned their languages, their customs, their secrets. She had made friends with beings who would have killed her if they knew the truth. She had built a network of contacts and informants that stretched across 12 worlds, and now it was time to use it. Sue moved through the crowded marketplace of Varath's capital city, her face showing nothing but casual interest in the goods around her. Inside, her heart was racing. She had waited so long for this moment. Sometimes, in her darkest hours, she had wondered if Earth had forgotten about her. If Project Horizon had been abandoned, if she would die on an alien world, alone and unknown. But the message had come. Protocol Sunrise was active, and Agent Kang Soo had work to do. She entered a small shop selling electronic components and nodded to the owner, a four-armed being with blue skin. The owner nodded back. He was one of hers, a member of the hidden network she had built over 15 years. "It's time," she said quietly. The owner's 4 hands trembled slightly. "Are you certain? Once we act, there is no going back. There was never any going back." Sue pulled out a small device and handed it to him. "Distribute these to the others. When I give the signal, activate them simultaneously. The Accord's communication arrays on this world will go dark." The owner took the device with shaking hands. "They will kill us when they find out." "They might." Sue met his eyes without flinching. "But our children will be free. Our grandchildren will walk among the stars without bowing to anyone. That is worth dying for." She left the shop and walked into the alien crowd, disappearing among beings who had no idea that a human spy had been living among them for 15 years, who had no idea that their world was about to become a battlefield. Back on Earth, Admiral Park Yuna stood before a camera in the deepest level of command, preparing to address the soldiers of Project Horizon across all of human space. "For 30 years, she began, her voice steady and cold, "we have pretended to be weak. We have bowed to alien masters and accepted their insults with smiles on our faces. We did this because we had no choice. We did this because we were not ready." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We are ready now. On 300 ships, in hidden bases across dozens of systems, in sleeper cells on alien worlds, humans watched and listened." "They called us violent," Yuna continued. "They called us dangerous. They looked at our history and saw only war and death, and they decided that we were monsters who needed to be controlled. They were right to be afraid, but they made one terrible mistake. They thought they could cage the wolves of Earth, and they thought they could keep us small and weak forever. They never imagined that we would use those 30 years to sharpen our teeth." Her eyes burned with cold fire. "Tomorrow we show them how wrong they were. Tomorrow we remind the galaxy why humanity should never have been cornered. Tomorrow we fight not as victims but as warriors." She raised her fist. "For Earth, for our children, for every human who ever had to bow to an alien and pretend it didn't hurt. At last, we fight back." The message ended. Across human space, soldiers and spies and scientists felt something change in their hearts. The fear that had lived there for 30 years began to transform into something else, something the Accord had never expected: hope. The war began not with a desperate defense, but with fire and fury that shocked the galaxy. On the first day, Agent Kang Soo gave her signal. Across 7 Council worlds, devices hidden in communication centers activated simultaneously. The Accord's military networks went dark. Admirals could not reach their fleets. Generals could not contact their troops. The greatest strength of the Galactic Accord, their unified command structure, shattered in an instant. By the time they realized what had happened, the silent fleet had already arrived. Commander Telex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching in disbelief as human ships appeared from nowhere. 300 vessels, emerging from the darkness between stars, moving in perfect formation toward his 4th Armada. "Where did they come from?" he demanded. "Our sensors showed nothing." His officers scrambled to respond, but before they could speak, the first human weapons fired. Captain Shin-Ara watched the pulse cannons do their work. Blue light streaked across the void, striking the elegant shields of Accord warships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields flickered, sparked, and died completely. Dozens of alien vessels suddenly lost all power, drifting helplessly in space. "All ships," Era ordered, her voice calm as ice. "Engage." The silent fleet fell upon the Fourth Armada like wolves upon sheep. Human ships closed the distance with terrifying speed, their heavy armor absorbing return fire that would have destroyed Accord vessels. They did not fight at range, where alien technology might have given them an advantage. They fought up close, where human aggression and human brutality made all the difference. Telex watched his fleet die around him. He had commanded the Fourth Armada for 20 years. He had won battles against a dozen species. He had never lost a single engagement. In 3 hours, his fleet was gone. His flagship was the last to fall. As human boarding parties cut through his hull, Telex finally understood the terrible truth. The Council had not declared war on helpless prey. They had kicked a sleeping predator and called it weak. The predator was awake now. On Earth, Admiral Park Yuna coordinated the battle from her command center, watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. Each victory was simply a step in a plan that had taken 40 years to build. Lieutenant Cho Mira stood beside her, reading updates as they arrived. "The Fourth Armada is destroyed. The Seventh Fleet has surrendered, and our forces have liberated the colony on Kepler Station." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "Admiral, the prisoners. The Accord had been using our people as slaves. Children, Admiral. They had human children working in their mines." Yuna's hand tightened on the edge of her console, her knuckles turning white. "Get them home. All of them. Whatever it takes." "Yes, Admiral." In the second week, General Bayek Tai led the ground invasion of 3 colony worlds that the Accord had pacified decades ago. The aliens expected human soldiers to fight like other species, with careful tactics and concern for casualties. They were wrong. Bayek was 58 years old, and he had trained his soldiers for this moment since they were children. They moved through alien cities like ghosts, striking hard and vanishing before the enemy could respond. They did not care about glory or honor. They cared about winning. They cared about bringing their lost brothers and sisters home. On the world called Tessara, the Council's capital, Speaker Vorith watched his empire crumble with growing terror. Reports came in faster than he could process them. Fleet destroyed. Colony lost. Communication silenced. Rebellion spreading. "How is this possible?" he demanded, his insect voice clicking with fear. "They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to surrender." No one had an answer. The humans were everywhere. They struck from shadows. They appeared from nowhere. Their weapons bypassed Accord defenses as if they did not exist, and worst of all, they showed no fear. They did not bargain. They did not negotiate. They simply attacked. Again and again with a fury that the galaxy had never seen before. On the bridge of the Iron Mountain, Captain Shin-Ara received word that the path to Tessara was clear. She allowed herself a small nod of satisfaction. "Set course for the capital," she ordered. "It's time to end this." Her fleet moved as 300 ships pointed toward the heart of the Galactic Accord. Admiral Yuna opened a communication channel to the entire human force. "This is command. All units converge on Tessara. I want the Council to see who is coming for them. I want them to understand what they have done." Dr. No Jun watched the battle data from his hidden station, tears running down his old face. His weapons worked. His designs held. Everything he had built, everything he had sacrificed, had been worth it. Agent Kang Su emerged from hiding on Verath, surrounded by the network of aliens who had helped her for 15 years. Some of them were dying, wounded in the chaos of the uprising, but they were smiling. "You did it," one of them whispered. Your people are free. Sue knelt beside him and took his hand. We did it together, all of us. The Battle of Tessara lasted 3 days. The Accord gathered every ship they could find, calling in fleets from across the galaxy to defend their capital. It was not enough. Human ships tore through their defenses like fire through paper. Dr. June's EMP weapons silenced their shields. Captain Ara's fleet crushed their formations. General Bayek's soldiers landed on Tessara's surface and fought their way toward the council chambers. Speaker Voreth died in the final assault. His flagship was surrounded by human vessels, its shields gone, its weapons silent. As Captain Ara's voice came over the communication channel demanding surrender, Voreth made one final, defiant attack. The Iron Mountain's guns fired once. The speaker's ship broke apart, scattering into 1,000,000 pieces of burning debris. Target destroyed, Ara reported, her voice flat and professional. The speaker is dead. On Earth, Lieutenant Mira brought the news to Admiral Yuna. It's over, Admiral. The Council has fallen. The Accord is asking for terms. Yuna sat in silence for a long moment. Her eyes were distant, looking at something Mira could not see. 40 years of planning. 40 years of hiding. 40 years of carrying a wound that never healed. And now, at last, it was over. Admiral? Mira asked softly. Are you all right? Yuna looked up at her young aide. I'm thinking about my family, she said quietly. My mother, my father, my little brother. They never got to see this day. They never got to know that we would fight back, that we would win. Mira did not know what to say. She simply stood beside her commander in silence. Tell our forces to accept the Accord's surrender, Yuna finally said. But make it clear, this is not a negotiation. This is an ending. The galaxy will never threaten humanity again. She stood and walked toward the door. And prepare my ship. I want to be on Tessara when we write the terms. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet command center, steady and strong. The war was over. Humanity had won. 6 months after the Council declared war on humanity, Admiral Park Yuna walked through the ruins of the Grand Chamber on Tessara. The dome that had once held a ceiling of artificial stars was cracked and broken. Sunlight streamed through the gaps, falling on rubble and dust. The seats where 47 species had once gathered to pass judgment on humanity were empty now, some of them shattered by weapons fire, others simply abandoned. Yuna walked slowly, her boots crunching on broken glass. She was alone, having ordered her guards to wait outside. This moment belonged to her. She stopped in the center of the chamber, in the exact spot where Ambassador Kong Duri had stood when the Council announced its war. The spot where humans had been forced to stand for 30 years, never allowed to sit among the civilized species. She looked up at the broken ceiling and breathed deeply. I wish you could see this, Father, she whispered. I wish you could all see this. Footsteps approached behind her. Yuna did not turn around. She knew who it was. You should not be alone here, Admiral, Lieutenant Cho Mira said softly. The building is not fully secured. I am not afraid. Yuna finally turned to face her aide. Not anymore. They stood together in silence for a moment. Two women from different generations, both shaped by a conflict that had defined their lives. The surviving council members have arrived, Mira said. They are ready to hear your terms. Yuna nodded. Then let us not keep them waiting. The meeting took place in a smaller chamber, one that had not been damaged in the fighting. 12 alien representatives sat around a curved table, their bodies showing signs of exhaustion and fear. They were the last leaders of the Galactic Accord, the remnants of an empire that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Now they sat before a human, waiting to learn their fate. Commander Telix was among them. He had survived the destruction of his fleet, rescued from the wreckage of his flagship by human soldiers who had been ordered to take prisoners. His yellow eyes watched Yuna with something that might have been respect, or perhaps simply resignation. Yuna did not sit. She stood before them, her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing nothing. "You tried to destroy us," she began, her voice calm and clear. "You declared war on our species. You planned to burn our worlds and kill our children. You called it necessary. You called it justified. You were wrong." None of the aliens spoke. They simply listened, knowing that their lives depended on the words that came next. "Humanity has defeated you," Yuna continued. "We have destroyed your fleets. We have occupied your capital. We have proven that we are not the weak, frightened creatures you believed us to be. By every law of war, by every tradition of conquest, we have the right to do to you what you plan to do to us." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But we will not." Surprise flickered across several alien faces. Telex leaned forward, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Humanity is not fighting this war for revenge," Yuna said. "We are not fighting to become the new tyrants of the galaxy. We are fighting to ensure that no species ever again has to suffer what we suffered, to prove that strength does not require cruelty, and that power does not demand tyranny." She stepped closer to the table. "You looked at our violence and saw only monsters. You never understood what that violence was for. We are fierce because we protect what we love. We fight without mercy because we know what it means to lose everything. That is the difference between us and you. You built an empire on fear. We built a fleet on love." Telex spoke for the first time, his voice rough. "What do you want from us?" "Recognition," Yuna answered. "Reparations for the colonies you destroyed, a seat at the table as equals, not as subjects, and a promise, enforced by treaty and by threat of force, that no species will ever again be treated the way humanity was treated." "That is all?" "That is everything." Yuna's eyes were hard. "The Galactic Accord is finished. In its place, we will build something new. A union of equals where no species is above another, where disputes are settled by law, not by power, where children can look up at the stars and see hope instead of fear." She turned and walked toward the door, then stopped. "You have one day to accept these terms. If you refuse, we will continue the war until there is nothing left of your civilization. I do not think you will refuse." She left them sitting in silence, their empire in ruins, their future in human hands. 1 week later, the treaty was signed. The Galactic Accord was formally dissolved. In its place, the Galactic Union was born, with humanity as one of its founding members. It was not perfect. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight, but it was a beginning. Captain Shin Ara became the first human admiral of the Union fleet, and her silent fleet forming the core of the new peacekeeping force. She accepted the position with her usual cold efficiency, but those who knew her well saw something different in her eyes. Pride. Dr. No Jun retired to Earth, where he began writing his memoirs. After 40 years of secrecy, he could finally tell the world what he had built and why. He called his book The Weapons of Hope, and it became the most read book in human history. General Baek Tai did not live to see the first anniversary of peace. His old body, worn out by decades of service, finally gave out 3 months after the treaty was signed. He died in his sleep, with a smile on his face and his medals on his chest. Humanity mourned him as a hero. Agent Kang Su returned to Earth after 15 years among the stars. She walked off her ship on shaking legs, overwhelmed by the smell of real air and the sight of a blue sky. Her family was waiting for her, people she had only seen in photographs for more than a decade. She fell into their arms and cried like a child. Ambassador Kang Duri lived just long enough to see the Union established. He passed away peacefully, surrounded by his family, his life's work complete. His last words were spoken to Yuna, who sat beside his bed holding his hand. "We did it," he whispered. "We really did it." "Yes," Yuna replied, tears streaming down her face. "We did." On the anniversary of the Council's war declaration, Admiral Park Yuna stood before the Memorial of First Contact in the rebuilt city of Seoul. The monument was simple, a wall of names, 8 million of them, representing everyone who had died in the Accord's demonstration of hierarchy. Her mother's name was there, her father's, her brother's. Lieutenant Mira stood beside her, as she always did now. "Are you all right, Admiral?" Mira asked. Yuna reached out and touched her brother's name. He had been 7 years old when he died. He would have been 47 now. He might have had children of his own, grandchildren even, an entire life stolen by beings who called his death necessary. "I spent 40 years preparing for this war," Yuna said softly. "Every day I woke up thinking about revenge, about making them pay for what they took from me. But now that it's over, I don't feel what I expected to feel." "What do you feel?" Yuna turned to look at the city around them. Seoul had been rebuilt, more beautiful than before. Children played in the parks. Families walked along the streets. Ships flew overhead, carrying humans to the stars and bringing aliens to Earth as friends, not masters. "I feel tired," she admitted, "and sad, and grateful. They took so much from me, Mira, so much from all of us. But they didn't take everything. They didn't take our future." The sun was rising over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere in the city, a child laughed. "Was it worth it?" Mira asked. "All the years of hiding, all the sacrifices?" Yuna watched the sunrise, her eyes soft for the first time in decades. The light fell on her face, warming skin that had spent too long in the darkness of underground bunkers and the cold of space. "My brother would have loved this," she said quietly. "He always wanted to see the stars. Now, because of what we did, children like him can travel among them freely. They can meet aliens as equals, not as slaves. They can dream without fear." She closed her eyes. "Yes," Admiral Park Yuna said, and for the first time in 40 years, she smiled with genuine warmth. At last, it was worth it. The sun rose higher, and a new day began. The war was over. The waiting was over. The long night of humiliation and fear was finally ending. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as servants, not as subjects, but as equals, proud and free, at last.